With Earth Day having been observed this week and much of the world's attention on the ecophysical wellness of our globe, we thought it a great time to reconnect with a friend that is passionate about that cause, to share some of her thoughts and tips on sustainability. Shambhala Farm of Anderson describes itself as an organic farm, growing produce with the incorporation of permaculture design and philosophies. Shambhala is owned and operated by Ali Szymanski, who joins us for today's Buzz of Madison County about being good stewards. Ali, thanks for joining us. Now, you actually have a degree in this.
I earned my bachelor's degree in geology with an environmental concentration.
Is Earth Day something that you have observed in the past or traditionally paid attention to?
Absolutely.
Why is it important that we observe and recognize Earth Day?
Personally, we take a lot of time, I think, to acknowledge a lot of important things within our society and communities. And one thing that I personally don't feel gets enough focus and attention is Mother Earth and all that it gives to us.
Do you think climate change is a real thing that we should be paying more attention to?
Yes, the science provides and backs that up, that ice caps are melting and sea level is rising, and that's a direct correlation to increasing temperatures on the surface of the earth. So I definitely think that it is something that we need to be bringing more awareness to and putting more concerted effort into reducing. And we do know, the earth is 4.7 billion years old, and due to oxygen and a variety of other isotopes, we can literally map the majority of the cyclical cycles that happen within our climate over the course of the Earth's history. So we do know that climate change is expected and is normal. We just are, as humans and our species and our emissions that we are releasing, are increasing that much faster than would have happened naturally.
Let's talk about what Ali does to make her little part of the world a little bit better in concern with everything we've been discussing so far, and what you can help others do to achieve the same.
I did buy the couple acres that I have here in Anderson. January was 4 years that I've had the property, and my first and foremost emphasis that I put on was planting as much stuff as I could. Trees, natives, starting to eliminate grass that needs petro to run my mower to cut, or the weed whacker to weed eat. I cut my grass as little as I can, and I just keep turning all of my grass into more and more flower beds. But that's something that I think is really easily accessible to anyone, is really working on eliminating your quote unquote lawn, that you put weed killer down and fertilizer down and use gas to mow, and you're taking out your violets and your dandelions and anything else that grows there, and just creating grass for what? Versus creating a native flower bed that can be habitat for pollinators or other beneficial insects or small wildlife that can bring you joy, as well as you are watching Earth's creatures thrive in a little micro environment that you can take cut flowers from, that you can not waste your time cutting grass and spending all of the money maintaining that. So I think that that's like one of the most accessible things that people may initially overlook when they're thinking about sustainability and reducing their carbon footprint and doing something beneficial. That's really fairly easy. You can start small, and that's what I've done each year, is I add on a little bit more every year. I take away a little bit more grass. I have about just shy of 3 acres. I take away a little bit more grass, and I put down more flowers and more native things that I can incorporate into my landscape. Things that don't need a lot of water and fertilizing and a lot of maintenance. I mean, there's, weeding that has to happen until things are well established. But that's one of the big things that I do. I do have a well here, and I try really hard to not pull as much from the well as I can. So I do have a water collection system that I have off of the back of my garage. I did put on a new metal roof whenever I bought the house because the other one was in very bad shape. And metal roofs are great for collecting water because they don't have the shingle particles that that most roofs, when you collect water, are going to get some of those shingle particulate in it, which is easily filterable. I don't use the water for anything but irrigation for my raised beds and my garden beds that I grow food in. So doing small levels of water collection is a great way. Also, when I don't use my well, then I'm not using electric that is still tied to the grid to pump the water out of my well up to ground level and use for a variety of things. So when I do irrigate, I have a solar system that I have set up. It's just one solar panel connected to a 12-volt battery that runs off of a DC pump, and I have all of the normal irrigation lines that you can buy at Menards or a variety of other landscaping places and run irrigation throughout your property. And they're fairly reasonably priced. I actually am just getting ready to double my system so I can irrigate more off of the rainwater that I collect and not string as many hoses all over my property. So I can kind of do two different locations with that. So water collection, solar power. I really want to experiment with some wind powered things out here because I am in the middle of a big cornfield and there's not a good windbreak around me. And so there's basically always a breeze. And I would love to figure out a way to collect some of that wind energy and be able to use that as additional way to use less grid energy and be more self-sustaining.
And it sounds like you're doing a great job of being self-sustaining by eliminating as much use as you can for the need of fossil fuels.
Yeah, I try. It's hard. I'd say the hardest thing, honestly, is I moved from Indianapolis out here to Anderson, and the hardest thing being when I lived in Indy, I did some of these things, but my biggest consumption really was driving a car. And I do have a Prius that when I do longer trips and I do have to drive for work a decent amount, especially pre-pandemic, but it's really hard to eliminate those emissions coming from the car. When you live in the city, I could ride my bike basically anywhere, and I did that a majority of the time, even throughout winter and everything, because Indy does such a really phenomenal job in making things really bike friendly and accessible. But yeah, carbon emissions is a big one. I was just having a conversation recently about no tilling and all of the carbon emissions that are released when you till your soil every year. And there's some really interesting data that has been released regarding the amount of CO2 that is stored in our soil. And every year when we go through, especially, mega farms that are processing thousands of acres, tens of thousands of acres of land, and how it compares to car emissions. And it's actually, if I recall correctly, more emissions are released tilling soil every year than for cars, depending on where you're at.
What can we find as far as produce coming from Shambhala Farms?
Yeah, my berry patches are doing really, really well. Finally, they are substantially filled in and should be, hopefully, if the birds don't get all of it, very bountiful. So berries should be coming this year, depending if we get a hard frost or not. A lot of my fruit trees are doing really well. I do a lot of the beautiful staples that are here for the Midwest. I have 20 different varieties of tomatoes I'm doing this year, all the different herbs you can think of. I am doing some little animal specialty herbs this year. So I have like catnip growing for the kitties that people can plant in their gardens. And My asparagus patches this will be the 5th year for some of them. And so they're finally really well established. Last year, I started to get into cut flowers as well. I did a little CSA where I partnered with a local cleaning company that one of my good girlfriends owns, Married to Cleaning. It's an Anderson based company. And we did a really cool CSA for her clients where people would get their houses cleaned and then they would come home and have a CSA delivery already waiting for them with a fresh bouquet of flowers. So I got really into growing the flowers last year and making custom bouquets for people. And so that was really fun. So I'm doing a big flower spot as well this year. I got into growing huckleberries last year, which typically is a plant that grows kind of like Montana or Washington State. They like higher elevation, my understanding, but I found some seeds and I read they would grow here and they're prolific. And along with that, capeberries and ground cherries, which is a kind of like a husk. They grow in these little papery husks, almost like a tomatillo. Cucumbers, squash, lots of onions and sweet potatoes. So there's a lot of greens in there too. I guess I should have mentioned that I grow quite a different variety of greens. That's kind of where the CSA from last year came in, was because I was having a hard time getting to the farmer's market, and then this opportunity for collaboration between another local business happened to materialize, and it worked out. It worked out really well. So we're doing it again this year as well.
You've mentioned CSA a couple of times. What is CSA?
A CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. And so basically, when farms offer CSAs, it's a way for the local community to support that farm by, quote unquote, buying a share of their farm for the season. And by share of the farm, I mean a share of the produce that's harvested. And they can set them up. They can do weekly CSAs, bi-weekly, monthly, just depending on how many people are in your house and how much produce you prefer. And in my CSA, I also do eggs from the chickens as well. And so it's a great way to support your local farmer and to commit. Really, I mean, people grow a lot of stuff and people say they're going to buy your stuff, but there's a lot of people that don't follow through with what they say that they're going to do, or maybe what their intentions are. And so by doing the CSA, you do commit to it. And for my CSA clients, they get it delivered to their house, and a lot of times they'll pay either like half of it up front or all of it for the season up front. And then the farmers can use that money to help grow all of that food and use that money to support themselves throughout the grow season. So it's a great way where the local community can invest in the farm and the farmer can invest in the local community.
What about the use of reusable items? Do you find yourself paying particular attention to reusable bags and water bottles and such?
Oh yeah. If my boyfriend was on in this conversation, he would say she throws away nothing. And yeah, everything is reusable. I mean, I don't buy like Ziploc baggies because I do have a handful of items that I purchase on a regular basis that come in nice, thick plastic bags. And I'll rinse those out and I will reuse them multiple times until they're no longer cleanable and, or they get holes in them or whatnot. But I've lived here for almost 4.5 years and I've never had trash service to my house. I have very, very little trash that comes from my house. I buy everything as much as I can, loose bulk. I save like all my mason jars or containers, hard containers that other spices or herbs or grains or oatmeal or different things that have other items have come in, and I clean them out and I take them down to a loose bulk Whole Foods kind of store down in Indy, and you go in and you can just fill up all your containers and and bring them back home and weigh them out and pay by the pound or whatnot. But that significantly reduces the trash that comes from my house. It's something that I have gradually implemented in my life over maybe the past like 10 or 12 years, where I just find better and better ways to do that. I know some people that are very close to me are just like, it's too much of an inconvenience to be thinking about putting that much intention into what you are bringing into your house that then has to leave your house as trash, and go into the landfill. But I encourage anybody who's thinking about doing those things to just starting small or paying attention to maybe one item that you realize is always coming into your house and always producing trash and you're always throwing away, and seeing if there's not a more sustainable option for you. Anything from even as simple as when you go to the grocery store to buy produce, not putting each individual item of produce in a plastic bag, or putting like more than one thing in one plastic bag, just reducing how much you're actually grabbing and taking, and then what you're going to do with that after your single use out of that item. I don't know. I just realizing how much trash I was producing when I was younger. I was eating healthy, but I was buying all of this stuff in plastic. And then now I'm, in my eyes, like polluting the earth with all of my trash. And so that was really a big catalyst for me of just being aware of what's my responsibility and contribution to the issue that we have of waste on this planet. I mean, we just have more and more landfills that keep popping up and filling up.
Do you feel like the pandemic has had an effect on sustainability, either increasing the attention that people are paying to it and their intention toward practicing, or hindering their ability to do so? Either way?
Yeah, I think it's both. I will say in a very positive way. So I also have, so I have the farm, but I also have a small nursery business associated with the farm where because I'm already starting all of my annual seeds, and I have a greenhouse, and I turn my basement into like a seed starting kind of grow up thing until the weather breaks. And it had materialized over a number of years of, people tend to start more seeds than they actually need, or they get a higher germination rate than they had anticipated. And I was giving away plants to a lot of people. And then some of those people were coming back the next year and they're saying, "Hey, Allie, can I buy some plants off of you?" And so fast forward 6 or 7 years, and I just kind of rolled that into my spring. Like, I'm starting seeds for me, and I'm starting seeds, for part of the business component of the farm. And last year, everything shut down and quarantine was happened, and everybody was doing home improvement projects and gardening, and people had time for things that they quote unquote never had time for before. And I will say that I've never sold out of everything as fast as I sold out as of last year. And I was able to donate a bunch of plants to different organizations that were starting community gardens for the first time. And it was a really positive thing for me to experience and witness of how many people were interested in gardening or starting gardening for the first time, or getting back into it after years, or saying, my parents or my grandparents had gardens when I was growing up and I've always been interested, but I've never had time. So I think that there was a shift, a really beautiful shift in that way for a lot of people. So I would say yes, that there was definitely some positive benefit that came from the pandemic, and people being able and interested in trying to find their own level of sustainability. I mean, I know that people were also going to there was a sense of scarcity. People were going to grocery stores and shelves were empty, and people were realizing that, or at least sensing a level of fear that I might need to know how to grow my own food one day. So I think that plays into it as well. And I think that there's a lot of very disposable items that came along with the pandemic as well, that sanitizing everything to, plastic gloves to one-time disposable masks to a lot of the PPE that people were using trying to protect themselves and their family and trying to not contract the virus and spread it. So, all of those things being obviously very understandable with not knowing very much at all about it when everything first happened last year. I tend to lean and try to focus on more of the positive things that at least that I've witnessed. And I will say that it's been really positive and lovely to witness. And I did start teaching quote unquote homesteading classes last year. So to help people that were interested in becoming more self-sufficient in a variety of ways, we offered 3 different self-sustaining homesteading classes on the farm last year. So that was really fun. And I hope to offer some of those again this year.
Are we making a difference?
Pros and cons of everything, right? But I know a lot of people want to have this huge kind of grandiose effect on society or the state or the Midwest, and I think that's those big picture things are needed, but I feel very passionately about making a positive impact on my immediate environment. And whatever ripples go out further, amazing. But I think that there is definitely beneficial and positive impact that is happening. And those positive effects are directly correlated to some of the things that I'm doing here on the farm. Absolutely.
We could talk much longer about this. If somebody wants to learn more from you about how to perpetuate sustainability, how to get started, how can they reach out to you? How can they learn more?
So I do have a website. The easiest way really to find it is if it's just going on Facebook or Instagram, and it's Shambhala Farm, SHAMBHALA Farm. And if you type in Shambhala Farm Anderson, you'll find me on a variety of ways. You're welcome to email me, shambhalafarmanderson@gmail.com. But I post all my events, plants for sale, anything else that's happening on the farm, primarily on Facebook and Instagram.
We hope that you'll support small businesses like Shambhala Farm and the others in your community. Your community's future is depending on it. Allie, thanks for joining us today and for your part in making our community and our world a better place to live. Thanks for listening. That's the latest buzz of Madison County.